How's it going, everyone? It's K-Limited here, and today we are doing another video game hunt. Today I went to the disc replay that I went to. The first video I did with all the PS2 games, the first time I went to the disc replay on camera, I went back there, and this time I was on a mission for PS3 games, for some other games like that too, and I immediately found one of the games I was looking for. I've been talking about PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. I saw that was one I definitely had to pick up. And there were some other PS3 games I was looking for, but I didn't quite see. I had never heard of this game before, but it didn't also look very good, so I just went ahead and put it back. But there's some other PS3 games I'm still looking for. I'm looking for some fighting games. I'm also just kind of looking for anything I haven't heard of before that's, anything different. I like a lot of the anime games that are a little bit more obscure and stuff like that too, so anything I see like that, I'm always willing to try out. And I'm also looking for Aliens vs. Predator on the PlayStation 3 still. I have I have multiple different ways to play it now, but they're all digitally. I'd like to have an actual physical copy of that game. I did check out the Xbox One games because I am looking for some Xbox One games, and I actually saw some of the ones I was looking for. The Far Cry series is a series that I've been kind of wanting to get into and try out recently, and I haven't done it yet. But I've been tempted to go ahead and pick up all the ones I haven't played. And they had a lot of the ones I haven't played. I haven't played Primal, I haven't played 4, I haven't played 5, I haven't played 6. So when I saw those, I was tempted by them, and they were really cheap, but now wasn't the time. I was on a mission for other things other than those games specifically. I'll be honest, if they had Far Cry 3 too, I probably would have gotten them all. Because I love Far Cry 3, and I've been like, okay, well, I'm willing to play through the entire collection again. For the first time, I'm willing to play through Far Cry 3 again, and the rest of the collection for the first time. I always look at the GameCube games, but just nothing really called out to me. I saw that the Animaniac games finally dropped in price, which is good. Those should never have been as expensive as they were. They're still too expensive, but $90 is better than over $100, which they originally were. I saw the Extreme G game. I played this on the N64 before, and I actually liked the N64 version, and I didn't know that there was one on the GameCube. I was very tempted to pick that one up. I didn't actually get it, because I found a lot of other stuff that I wanted more, and that stuff is all Game Boy related. So, here's the Game Boy case. This is one of the reasons I also came to Disc Replay, because I wanted to see Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color games, and they did not disappoint when it comes to the Game Boy games. They had a ton of them. Now, I didn't get actual Game Boy games or Game Boy Color games. I got Game Boy Advance games, but I'm still very happy with the games that I found. And you're going to see the Game Boy Advance case here in a minute, but I had to go through some of these because there are some actual Game Boy and Game Boy Color games that I'm still looking for. I'm looking for some of the Tiny Toon ones. I'm looking for the English version of Gremlins the New Batch on Game Boy, because I have the Japanese version but not the English version. So there are things I'm looking for on the original Game Boy. And there I saw one of the games that I needed, though, on the Game Boy Advance, Sims Herbs, and I knew that one was coming with me. If nothing else, that one's coming with me. I love Sims Herbs. It's an amazing game. In my opinion, I've actually played through it on the DS, and I actually think it's the best DS game. It is phenomenal. I love that game. And I had to look through all of these DS games because they had so many that I didn't know existed, so many awesome games that I have played before and that I was tempted to pick up, and I got a decent amount. I think I got like 5, Game Boy Advance games here, and I'm happy with my pickups, and you can see it's just so many. I was in Game Boy heaven right here. This little case had so much in it, and I was so happy to see all of it, man. It was great. And you can see row and row and row of these games there. It's hard to point out a singular thing just because of how much there was. I do like movie tie-in games. I know not a lot of people do, so I do sometimes look for movie tie-in games or cartoon tie-in games, and I did see some Jimmy Neutron games. I've never played the Jimmy Neutron games before, so those ones are something I'd like to try out eventually on the Game Boy. I've played the PlayStation 2 ones, but not the Game Boy ones. There's some SpongeBob games I'd like to find for it. I'd like to find Lights Camera Pants eventually for the Game Boy Advance, because that copy on the Game Boy Advance, it's very different from the PS2 version, but it's still really, really good. I'd like to find the original Lego Star Wars. There's so much that I want on the Game Boy Advance, and luckily for me, the games are ridiculously cheap. The majority of them. Not every game is cheap, but a lot of them are. You know, Sim Zerbs, that game was a little bit more pricey. It was about $25, but for a lot of the stuff that I like, you know, the stuff based off of TV shows, stuff based off of cartoons, stuff based off of movies, that stuff's usually pretty cheap, so that's great for me. That's great for me, but yeah, this was just awesome. I did check out the NES games too, but there wasn't anything I needed. I did go over to the Super Nintendo game. I got excited. I saw the Maximum Carnage game because I thought it was Doom. Not Doom. Not a boomer shooter. Not really interested. I was wanting Doom. I still want Doom on the Super Nintendo. It's something I'm looking for, but I think I'm going to have a little bit of a hard time finding it. There's some Super Nintendo games I'm looking for. I did see that they had this little Porky Pig game that I've been looking at. That's one that I'm tempted by, and I still kind of want to pick up in the future. I did see this Aliens vs. Predators game, because I did not know that there was an Alien vs. Predator game on the Super Nintendo, so when I saw that, that was pretty tempting, not gonna lie. I was pretty happy to see that. I was also looking for... I like boomer shooters. So I like Doom. I was wanting Wolfenstein 3D on the Super Nintendo because I believe that has Super Nintendo release. And when I was looking at the Game Boy Advance, I was also looking for Doom on there because I believe it had a release on there too. So I do like looking for boomer shooters, but unfortunately I just did not see any. I checked out the Genesis games. However, when it comes to Genesis games, I really only pay attention to the stuff that's in the box, because the Genesis games actually still have good cases. I like what the Genesis has, but I like to have the cases for it, because I think the cases are actually really nice. You know, it's not like collecting for the Super Nintendo where you're just collecting a cardboard box, and you can see the Maximum Carnage there. Without the box, it's $40. With the box, it's $150. Yeah, no thank you. I'm not paying over $100 extra for a cardboard box. But it is what it is. So after I get out of Disc Replay, I did go to a flea market, because I like going to flea markets and checking out what video games they had. And they actually had some surprising things today. Now, this stuff is usually here. There's always these Game Boy games. Nobody ever picks them up. I don't know if they're actually real Pokemon games or not, to be honest with you. I'm not really a Pokemon guy, so I don't really care about them too much. Like, Pokemon's okay, but, you know, I don't care enough about it to really worry about these games. But he had quite a few Game Boy Advance games. He had some DS games and stuff like that. He always has quite a few different things. He had Donkey Kong games, but they were overpriced. So, not really interested. I see Donkey Kong games everywhere. Like, that's a game that almost, I feel like everyone had back in the day. So, I just see copies for it constantly. But I did see some PS3 controllers, and I was actually a little bit tempted by those, because PS3 controllers are a little bit pricey these days, so $30 a piece didn't seem bad for it. But then I saw that PlayStation 1, and it was like $90, and I was just like, alright, I'm done here. When I see a PlayStation 1 for, over $50, yeah, I'm done. I'm not interested in that area anymore, or that booth anymore, so I just left when I saw that. This is something I want to point out that you see a lot of sellers do, where they just pile their games on top of each other and you can't see what they are. I don't get that. I really don't get that. Like, what do you expect people to do? Do you really think I'm going to go grab someone from the front and be like, hey, let me see what these games are? Especially when the top games are, like, really crappy games. Like, display your games better if you want people to buy your games. And I did see, though, a DVD rack from across the flea market, and I had to go up and check it out. And I'm glad that I did, because they actually did have some video games. I saw this, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, not really Assassin's Creed guy, but $4 for it is not a bad price, in my opinion, at least. It usually goes for probably like 10 or so. It's usually not that much, but still. I saw Fable 3, that's a fantastic game, and it had the old GameStop cover art on it. I kind of wish they'd still use that, honestly. I miss the old GameStop cover art. I'm nostalgic for it. I always check the CD cases, too, because sometimes there's PS1 games, but there's actually just PC games mixed in with this one. I don't really collect a whole lot of PC games unless it's something that I really, really, really want. But nothing in there that I was crazy about. But yeah, there were some video games mixed in. Final Fantasy XII was in there. There was a lot of sports games, like there always is. There's ATV games. However, ATV games are actually usually pretty good. I enjoy those games. I enjoy racing games on the PS2, so racing games are like good sports games. They're like the sports games that everyone can get behind. I like regular sports games too, honestly, but they're usually overpriced when you go to a place like this, because a lot of game stores sell their sports games for like $1 or $2 a piece. So, it's not really worth spending more money for them at a flea market, especially. Finding Nemo, that's a game I've been kind of tempted to pick up recently because I did play it once as a kid. And ATV Off-Road Fury, I played Off-Road Fury 2. I don't know if I played the first one or not. I think I played the first one because they gave it away free on like Xbox or something like that. But yeah, I always got to check out the DVD section though and make sure that there's nothing I need. This was me pulling out the MX Unleashed again just to kind of get another look at it. The cover art was damaged too. I did notice it had some water damage. I saw this and I thought this was actually kind of cool. It's a Welcome to PlayStation 3 Blu-ray, and it basically is just like a little welcome disc. You just watch it and it's just like, hey, welcome to PlayStation 3, thank you for buying your system. Here's what you can expect from your PlayStation 3. And I'd never really seen that before, and when I saw that I was just like, whoa, this is just a sitting here and it's still sealed. I thought that was cool. I don't collect things like this personally because I want things in my collection that I can actually use. I've kind of slimmed down everything in my collection to stuff that I actually want and stuff that I'll actually play and stuff that I'll actually use. So stuff like random DVDs and Blu-rays and stuff based on video games or just video game items that kind of just sit around and I know I'm not going to do anything with, I don't pick up. I don't want just a bunch of random clutter. I want stuff that I know I'm going to use. I saw some PC games there that like A Realm Reborn. I thought that was kind of cool. Some MMO stuff. I do like seeing MMOs on disc still because, I had Star Wars The Old Republic on disc when that was really big, so I like seeing those on disc every now and then. If I could find them in nice boxes, I'd probably pick them up and collect them if I ran across them in person, but they're not something like I'm going out of my way to look for. I did find more Xbox 360 games in this area. Nothing great, though, unless you consider Farming Simulator great, which I personally don't, so nothing quite for me, but it's always worth a look, right? It's always worth looking, but unfortunately, not much for me. The thing with these flea markets is, and you gotta remember this, is that for every one video game booth, there's 100 booths just filled with crap that nobody wants. That's the way flea markets work. There's always one booth that has video games. There's always a few booths that have video games, but they're sprinkled in within just hundreds and hundreds of booths that have crap. However, this one did not have crap. This one had good stuff. So I think that this one may have been a booth from someone who was like stationed overseas or something, because there was a lot of military stuff and it was like foreign money and stuff like that. But there's also Famicom games, Super Famicom, regular Famicom games. There was Japanese N64 games in this booth. There was, Japanese Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games. There's so much here. And I saw Super Bomberman B here. They had Super Bomberman 1 and Super Bomberman 2. I was excited when I saw this because I got that Retron 5 and I can play these now. And I love Super Famicom games, so I was definitely interested in some of these. Now, the prices were definitely hit and miss, but, not all the prices were bad on them, actually. There were some that actually had pretty fair prices on them. The Bomberman games were a little bit more than they go for online, so I decided not to get those. But I was just happy to be able to dig through Japanese games at a flea market. What are the odds of running across, Super Famicom games at a flea market of all things? There were more Japanese video games here than there were English flea markets throughout the entire flea market. That was awesome. And you can tell that they haven't really been touched much because a lot of people don't have ways to play them or they're just not interested in them where I live. So that was great. I was able to just dig in these, and I was in Super Famicom heaven here. I loved looking at these things. There were so many Donkey Kong games. I think that he had all three of them. There was a lot of Dragon Quest games here, too. I don't buy the Dragon Quest games that are in Japanese because they're very text-heavy, and, I want to play video games. So when it comes to Super Famicom games, I try to avoid RPGs because I want to play the games. I know that if I get an RPG, I'm probably not going to play through it because I'm not going to understand what's being said. I'm not going to know what I'm doing. So it's just easier for me to stick to platformers and racing games and stuff like that when it comes to Super Famicom and original Famicom games. So I always try to find stuff that's more simple. And this is one of the games that I did find that I had never actually seen before. And I was pretty excited about it. I think it's called Xardion or something like that. And it's pretty interesting. It's actually a side-scrolling platforming game where you're playing as robots and you get to play as different robots and stuff. I had never played it before, but I looked it up and it looked pretty good, so I was excited to play that one. One thing I always do whenever I do find a game that I'm interested in, I immediately look it up online after I find it because I want to make sure that the language barrier isn't going to be a problem. And it didn't look like that one was going to be a problem to play through. I was interested in this Mickey Mouse game because I had literally just returned a copy that didn't work, but it was actually more expensive than it usually goes for, so I put it back. I checked out the Game Boy Advance games, but nothing really called out to me. A lot of it was like Game Boy Advance sports games. There was actually a ton of Game Boy Advance baseball games, which was kind of odd, but hey, if that's what you enjoyed, that's what you enjoyed. And it's not really my thing, but hey, there's plenty of them, apparently. Actually, there's quite a few Japanese-only baseball releases, which is kind of weird. I wouldn't expect it to be that big over there, but I guess it is. I saw Ranma 1/2. I think that's how you say that. Ranma 1/2. I've never watched anime before, but I've seen the series. Like I've seen it around and stuff like that. I've seen pictures of it and everything like that. And it is, I think, from the same creators, Inuyasha, which I do like. I believe so. I could be wrong about that, but I saw that. And I was kind of interested in it, but once I looked it up, and this is why I look up video games, once I looked it up, it turned out that it was very text-heavy, and I knew that the language barrier was going to be too big of a problem for me to be able to play it, but is what it is, you know? You gotta find it. If you see it, you gotta hold it for a minute until you look it up and see if you're going to be able to play it or not. But yeah, you can just see cases and cases and cases of these things. And they're all in these magnetic cases. And these things, it's kind of funny. I went to the register and none of the workers could actually open them. They didn't know how to open it. And they were struggling for like 5 minutes. And I was just like, can I try it? And then I opened it first try. They were trying on the wrong side of it. I was just like, all right, here we go. And I just opened it immediately. I thought it was kind of funny. I felt a little bit bad for them because it's just like, you know, they obviously don't set these cases out. This is someone else's booth, and they had this design set up, so they're not used to working with the magnetic keys and stuff like that. But I picked it up. I was just like, boop, open. So I just thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, I definitely had to dig and look at every single thing in this booth because I wanted to make sure that I was leaving no stone unturned when it comes to video games in this. And one other thing that I did mention is that they had N64 games, and there weren't a lot of them, but there was like a Mario Party, and then there was also this, which I thought was cool. It was a Banjo-Kazooie on N64, and I love Banjo-Kazooie. If I had a Japanese N64, I would have taken that home because I love Banjo-Kazooie. That is awesome to see. Alright guys, now let's get right into the pickups. Okay guys, so here are the pickups for today's game hunt. First things first, we're going to start off with this. I did pick up a copy of Star Fox on the Super Nintendo. This was only $14.99, so not too bad of a price for it. This is one that I've been wanting to own physically for a while, and when I saw it for $14.99, I figured, hey, I've been looking for this game ever since I got the Retron 5. This is one that I've been wanting. That seems like a good enough price for me, so I went ahead and picked that one up. I'm looking forward to playing through it on the Retron 5. And I did get another Super Nintendo game. I also picked up this, and I didn't actually know that this was even a thing, honestly. This is Aliens vs. Predator on the Super Nintendo. I love the movies for Aliens vs. Predator. I love the video game on the PS3 and Xbox 360. I didn't know that this was a thing, but when I saw that it was, I definitely wanted to buy it. So I picked it up, and it was a little bit more expensive at $34.99, but I also have just never really seen it before. So I was just like, you know what? I'll do it just because I'm a fan of Aliens vs. Predator. It doesn't really matter too much because I like this series enough. And from what I know, this is like a beat-em-up style game. So I'm interested to check out what this game is going to be like. Next up, I also found another game that I have actually been looking for. I've mentioned this in a few other videos. This is PlayStation All-Stars, a Battle Royale for the PlayStation 3. This is one that I've been keeping my eye out for, and they did have it, so I was very happy to pick it up. For only $7.99, I figured, hey, that is probably the best price I'm going to find it for, so I'm happy with this. The case is in really good condition, and I'm just happy to be able to finally play this game. This is one that I've been wanting to play for a long time, and now I can finally play it, and it's finally in my collection. So next up, I did get some Game Boy Advance games that I'm pretty excited about. These are games that I've been looking forward to picking up. So let's go ahead and get into these. So I picked up Spyro Season of Ice and Spyro Season of Flame. These are pretty cheap games. You can see $4.99 a piece. I haven't played any of the Game Boy Spyro games. And I need to pick up Spyro Orange and Crash Purple at some point. Those are two more I'd like to find. But I saw these and they were cheap, and I was just like, oh, okay, cool. Spyro games on the Game Boy. Never played them before, but I loved Spyro growing up. I'll go ahead and pick them up. So there we go. I played Spyro on the PS1 and also the PS2, Enter the Dragonfly growing up. That's why I played. So I'm excited to check these ones out. So next up is a couple of Danny Phantom games. Now, I have not played the Ultimate Enemy one here, but I have played Urban Jungle, and Urban Jungle is awesome. It's like a shoot-'em-up game, and I absolutely love this game, and I highly recommend it. It's $7.99, which is not a bad price for it, and like I say, it's a really, really good game, and I highly recommend that you try this one out if you love shoot-'em-ups. I'm going to do a review for this on the channel eventually. I'm going to play through it on the Retron 5 and capture footage for it and everything, but it is a phenomenal game. I've played it on the Game Boy Advanced. It's great. But yeah, I don't know what this one is, but I just saw it was another Danny Phantom one. I was just like, well, the other one's good, so why not? And this one was cheaper. This one was only $4.99. Alrighty, so next up, this one, this is Mighty Beans. So the reason I picked this one up was actually because I grew up with Mighty Beans. I grew up with the toy line, and I love Mighty Beans. I think that, I don't know, for some reason I collected them as a kid. I always liked them as a kid. And this is a puzzle game where you're basically trying to make sure that the Mighty Beans have the right tops and the right bottoms, and you're trying to, like, find the correct pieces for the Mighty Beans and put them together. It's a simple-looking game. I've never played it before, but I mainly get it just because it's Mighty Beans, and I love Mighty Beans growing up. I still think Mighty Beans are awesome. I wish they'd come back. But I remember when they used to be really skinny, and then they did like a reboot, and they tried to make them like really fat for some reason. I don't really know what the difference was. But I loved Mighty Beans. Those were awesome. Mighty Beans and, there was another toy line that I really liked that was like called Tac Tac Dudes or something like that. And they were like little guys that you would like, their arms and legs would click and stuff like that, and you could like attach them. They were really cool. I always liked those too. But there's Mighty Beans. And then the last game I got at that particular game store, and one that I'm very happy about, it was a little bit more on the pricey side, but this game's going up online. This game's going for about $30 to $40. So $24.99 was not a bad price for it. This is Urbz Sims in the City. I loved this game on the Nintendo DS. It's one of the best games on the DS. It's a fantastic Sims game because it's not your regular Sims game where you're taking care of a bunch of different characters. You have one character, you create him or her, and you have this amazing storyline that is just a ton of fun where you're trying to take down this like evil rich dude who's, it's really, really good, and I highly recommend it. Definitely check out the Urbz Sims in the City. And from what I understand, the Game Boy Advance version is like the same version as the DS, but now that I have a Retron, I can play it on the TV, and I can capture footage